Hi, I'm Lori Betts. Welcome to Golden Years. This month, my guest is Cynthia McQuown from Cornerstone Psychological Services, and our topic is going to be depression. The holidays are right around the corner, so hopefully we could give you some tips. Come on back.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I'm super excited to introduce my dad because he's my hero. When I was little, he was doing this really important work, driving ambulances in Iraq. Now he's home, and he's still a hero because he tells the ambulances where to go when there's an emergency. I'm so proud of him. He's awesome. He's my dad.
If a service-connected disability hinders your civilian career, Volk Rehab offers a variety of services to help prepare you for your next mission.
There is nothing wrong with your television. We are controlling transmission. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to Brunswick Area Television.
Welcome back. I'm interviewing Cynthia McQuown from Cornerstone Psychological Services, and we are going to talk about depression. Cindy, thank you for coming back again.
Oh, so nice to be back, Lori. Thanks so much for having me.
And October is National Depression
Screening Day occurs in October. It's actually October the 10th, but I try to take the opportunity to get out and educate people about the signs and symptoms of depression during the whole month of October.
Okay. And depression affects every age.
Yes.
All of us.
Yes,
It could be
all
you,
of us.
I, anybody at any time.
Absolutely.
What are some of the signs of depression? How could someone, you know, because you have good days and you have bad days. You have bad hair days.
Right.
You just have bad to-do days.
Right.
So what are some of the signs?
Well, and you know, you mentioned something that makes it hard for people to recognize when they're dealing with clinical depression. I always say depression is more than just having a down day. Clinical depression is really characterized by, oftentimes people don't know, and will say things like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't have any reason to feel this way. And that's one of the reasons that people don't necessarily self-identify what's going on and may not seek treatment. For older adults, it's a complex kind of picture. We know that about 15 out of every 100 adults over 65 experience at least an episode of clinical depression. That's basically 6.5 million people.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. And again, you mentioned that everybody experiences it, but there are really some special considerations for people over 65, which is why I'm really glad that we're here to talk about it today. People over 65, we have this stereotype out there that, you know, old age is supposed to be affiliated with decline. And I think the stereotype extends such that people think, well, pain, depression, it's all part of getting older. And I just want people to understand, you know what, clinical depression is not a normal part of the aging process. And in fact, it's really important for us to recognize depression in aging adults because depression, especially if it remains untreated, increases the likelihood of dependency issues for an older adult. It increases the likelihood of disability, all of which, you know, certainly impact the quality of life for both the older adult and his or her family. So it is real important to recognize the signs and symptoms.
And we're in a world of changes.
Yes.
I mean, daily there's just changes happening all around us. In today's society, an older adult, is the depression different from years back?
I don't think it's so much that it's different from how it used to look years ago. I do think we have well-established treatments, well-established information about how clinical depression looks as we age. And depression, the face of clinical depression can look a little different whether you're an adolescent, an adult, or someone over 65. I think that's, again, one of the reasons I like talking about it is because a lot of people don't know. One of the challenges for adults over 65 is that many of the signs and symptoms of clinical depression can get misdiagnosed or confused with other conditions that are associated with aging, memory loss and confusion. You know, sometimes people might just think, well, I'm getting older, that's just part of it. Difficulty concentrating, you know, aches and pains, difficulty sleeping. You know, those things could get dismissed or just passed off as, well, you know, you're getting older. When in fact, we really need to talk to older adults more, get more information, and really accurately be able to identify whether or not clinical depression could be the problem. You know, many older adults who experience a depressive episode likely have experienced them once or twice throughout their lifetime. How they show up, though, in older age can look a little different. Some of the common signs are memory problems, again, forgetfulness, but confusion, more easily confused, more easily frustrated and irritable about things, more social withdrawal, just comments like, I just don't feel like doing anything, or I don't want to do anything.
That's an easy get out.
And kind of a variety of aches and pains and loss of appetite can be another sign. Slowing down. I mean, slowing is generally something we associate with getting older. We don't move as quickly.
Right.
We don't think as quickly. I know I'm frequently saying, you know, let me just wait a second because it's coming. You know, those are all things that generally occur over time. But when there is kind of an increase or an intensification of that slowing, whether it is of speech, somebody stops mid-sentence, can't seem to finish their sentence, physical movement just becomes slower. A lot of times, one way I would describe depression is a person feels slowed, heavy, their body feels heavy, they feel almost like they're, you know, it's moving through quicksand. It can kind of be a physical description of depression. Another thing that can make it hard to identify in an older adult is if you ask them, they're not necessarily going to say, yeah, I think I'm depressed. In fact, they might say,
might not. No.
Right. They might say, I don't have any reason to be. I just don't know why I feel like this. I just don't feel like myself. Certainly having thoughts about, well, why should I even bother living, or I shouldn't even be here, or specific thoughts about ending one's life are definite indicators that a depressive episode is happening. A lot of people don't know, Lori, that older adults are really one of the highest risk groups for suicide. In fact,
It's so sad.
Yeah, it is very sad.
But you don't live with the senior 24/7,
Right.
and you don't know what he or she goes through every day.
Right, right. And, you know, adult men over 65, widowers, are the highest risk category for suicide. So it just becomes very important to talk about the signs and symptoms, to not be afraid to inquire.
So, okay, let's say a senior's living alone.
Right.
And so she knows she's getting kind of changing mentally.
Right.
So who would she approach? Would she approach her family physician, a friend, a neighbor?
I think any of those might be reasonable places to start. Probably for most adults, they have an established relationship with a primary care doctor, and that really is a good place to start. Whether it's the older adult, him or herself, or a concerned family member, starting with your doctor and saying, you know, I just haven't been feeling myself lately, or having a family member come with. You know, a lot of times, you know, if you're concerned about your loved one, your mom, your sister, your dad, just asking if you might go along with them to their next doctor's appointment, or making an appointment specifically to share concerns. A lot of times family members don't know what to do, or oftentimes are afraid to even address the topic. That's
It's a
certainly
touchy topic.
Yeah, it is a touchy topic. And you know, there's still, even in this day and age, people have stigma around mental health disorders. You know, but what I tell people about depression is, you know, we don't, you know, our head's attached to the rest of our body, and depression is a brain illness. It's not some weakness or moral character flaw. It affects lots of folks. And older adults are a vulnerable group simply because untreated depression has greater implications for disability and death, and because it's just really much more likely to go unnoticed or undiagnosed in older adults. So it is important to have the conversation, to share concern. But starting with your family doctor would probably be a good place to start. Family doctors are usually very skillful at identifying signs and symptoms of depression, but you might need to initiate that dialogue. And from there, doctors usually can refer folks who seem like they might benefit from what we call talk therapy, really sitting down and talking to somebody who can help you sort through what's been going on, and help you really get out things that may have been building up.
Because sometimes when you get the family involved, the senior's afraid to talk all that's going on in their mind, because then they're thinking, I'm not going to be able to live alone anymore.
Yes.
But they have to worry about their safety too.
That's right. Well, and the truth is, avoiding seeking help is actually likely to bring about those kinds of things that you don't want. If you're staying more isolated and more sedentary, you know, muscle tone doesn't last like it did when you were 20.
Definitely.
So to go through a period where you become very inactive can certainly kind of hasten disability when in fact you were formerly active or got out and at least went for a walk or gardened. Maintaining activity levels is a really important part of helping get through a depression.
Home activity.
Right, and so again, even though somebody might be a little hesitant to talk about it, it really is important to have the conversation and not to wait. Because again, you can't get through depression with willpower or pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Again, it's a brain disease. People really need to seek effective and appropriate treatment.
And they have to be honest with themselves too, because like you had said, okay, so the brain activity starts changing.
Right.
And it could be one way this day, and then it could change maybe worse the next day.
Right.
So you have to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I am feeling kind of blah. And there is something going wrong with myself, and I need to address it.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people don't understand that there are certain medical conditions that can also affect or bring about depression. Parkinson's disease, heart disease, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, thyroid problems, B12 deficiency. Those are just some of the illnesses.
Our body's all connected.
That's right. The body, that's right. We're not cut off from the neck up.
Said that,
it's all connected. And so sometimes you can have one of those illnesses, and again, those types of conditions become more common as we get older, and those conditions can set off a depressive episode. Things like having to go into the hospital for treatment. And again, older adults are more sensitive to some of those transitions and changes into the recovery time. Just being in a hospital can precipitate a depressive episode. So it's just important to, you know, think about and understand, I need to take care of my emotional and mental well-being because that's going to affect my whole physical self. And certain medical conditions as well as medications. Again, older adults are one of the groups that are more likely than any other age group to take multiple medications. Sometimes medications can precipitate depression. Common ones like high cholesterol drugs, heart, blood thinner drugs. You know, those are just a few, but all of those can be related to a depressive episode.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come right back.
I feel like it's all on my shoulders. How am I going to take care of my parents if they develop an eye disease like glaucoma? Glaucoma is the leading cause of blindness in African Americans and Hispanics in the United States. And what about my kids? Will they inherit it? Not to mention my risk factor. I'm really concerned and I need some answers.
Call 1-800-437-2423 or go to ahaf.org for answers, including a free brochure on glaucoma.
See these hands? They grip the wheel of a Humvee in Afghanistan. These hands, they're here for the person who fought in Afghanistan.
Confidential help is just a call, click, or text away.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Lori Betts, and this month I am interviewing Cynthia McQuown from Cornerstone Psychological Services, and we are talking about depression. And unfortunately, depression will affect many people, no matter what age you are and whatever is going on in your life. That does have an effect on it. And I have a mother, Cindy, and sometimes I'll say, you know, what's wrong, Mom? How come you just feel blah today? And she'll say, there's nothing wrong with me. And you know there's a change. Right. So how could the family member, as they're walking on eggs, how can they hit that head on?
Yeah. It is a hard topic. Trying to suggest to somebody that something might be wrong with them is not ever easy. Mm-hmm. And I think especially, again, I think I said before, there still is stigma attached to things like depression problems. I try to really help people understand it's a medical condition. And you know what? Just simply starting by expressing concern. Family members usually are the ones who might begin to notice a difference. You might notice that mom or dad is not dressing or grooming like they usually do. Maybe not showering. Maybe not taking time to clean up in their kitchen, or not bothering to cook or eat a regular meal. Or you might see evidence of food that's just laying around. That lack of care and keeping of themselves or their home environment would be a definite worry for a family member. And you know, some of those big red flags could be ways that you begin to talk about something. You know, another thing that we didn't talk about yet was the likelihood when someone is depressed to start drinking or to increase drinking alcohol. And it happens, and again, I really try to impress upon people, it doesn't mean you're a bad person or you have character flaws. You know, depression, clinical depression, is physically, emotionally, and mentally painful. People may not know what's going on, they just know they feel awful, and they really want relief. And, you know, the truth is that alcohol is a powerful anesthetic, and it will bring temporary relief, although it comes with terrible consequences, especially for an older adult. Alcohol, aging, not a good mix, just simply because of advanced age and difficulty with metabolizing alcohol. And older adults are more likely to be taking medications, which could counterindicate mixing alcohol with them. But those are some of the kinds of topics that a family member might notice some evidence of change. So the best way to do things is just to initiate a conversation and kind of feel their adult parent out. Hey, Mom, I noticed that you don't seem to be changing your clothes every day. What do you think that's about? And see what kind of response they get. You know, another really non-threatening thing that we do at Cornerstone, we go on the road and play Feel Good Bingo. Feel Good Bingo is, obviously, it's a bingo game. We'll be doing that again next month, and this month, I guess, October. On October 10th and October 11th, we have events planned at both the Brunswick Senior Center and the Wadsworth Senior Center to play Feel Good Bingo. Family members could sign a loved one up. We do Feel Good Bingo just because we know some of these topics are uncomfortable to talk about. But if we give the information in a non-threatening way by playing bingo, and giving prizes, because we always have prizes.
Oh, they like prizes.
Yes, prizes are good.
$1,000 or?
We can get that information out there, and I'll tell you, I have never done an event where I don't have at least one or two people who pull me aside after the event and say, you know, I think I might need to talk to you, or I think I know someone who needs to talk to you. So it's a really good way to make a connection, raise awareness about signs and symptoms of depression.
And you're in a group. And you're having fun.
That's right.
And you're learning.
That's
We're
right.
not singling you out.
That's right.
But you are there to hear other people could be in the same situation.
Yeah.
You know,
Because
aging is not for sissies.
That's
I do
right.
that every
That's
day
right.
for my customers. Don't get old. Don't get old.
Yeah. And you know, it is hard sometimes to talk. The irony
depressing.
is, yeah. When we love somebody, sometimes that makes it the hardest. And especially, like you said, if you've got somebody who stubborn or wants to hold on to, I get to decide, as in they see that as their independence, and they might feel like their independence is threatened. It can be very difficult. And family members, really, they are the greatest sources of support, but if communication breaks down, boy, we really have to keep lines of communication open. And some of those topics like, geez, your health, or I'm concerned that you might be depressed, those can be difficult things to initiate a conversation about. We actually have begun a program called Resolve at Cornerstone Psychological. Resolve is a form of, we're a mediation practice, but we're specially trained as elder mediators to address common concerns that arise around aging and multi-generational families, to help family members maintain open lines of communication and solve their own difficulties. And really, it's a process to avoid family relationships being strained, or worse, broken off entirely. But having conversation about depression or issue of safety at home. I had someone share with me that their loved one did not want to wear a
emergency pendant, lifeline.
That just felt like, nope, I can do this on my own. And yet others were very concerned about their older adults' mobility.
But a young person can trip. Anything can happen.
Anybody, that's
a young
right.
person
And
can
when you're
get
living by
dizzy,
yourself,
who's going to check on you?
That's right.
I mean, the kids check in periodically, or a neighbor.
Right.
But you could be, I've heard stories that people lay there for 4 hours, 24 hours, so there's nothing wrong with that.
And you know what, even I live right next door to my mom. I check on her every day because I take her mail and her newspaper, but she wears a Life Alert pendant because, if you're hurt, you can't get to the telephone.
Exactly.
And she would lay there for 24 hours sometimes because I don't live with her anymore.
Yeah.
So those are important things, and family members need to be able to have those conversations. And I don't know about you, but think about times when there's a disagreement or a conflict. Maybe you think that mom or dad should be moving towards another style of living,
assisted living,
assisted living, not living all by themselves anymore in a big house that is too big for them to maintain, but maybe mom or dad thinks that's ridiculous, I'm doing fine. How do you begin to have those conversations? Or you want to support mom or dad at staying in their home as long as possible, but you have a sibling who says, oh no, that's ridiculous, we need to get mom or dad in a nursing home.
Family dynamics.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? In the ideal world, we all get along wonderfully and we can talk about anything, but that's the ideal world. And in reality, a lot of times when there is conflict, that's when people end up in my office. They stop talking. And when people stop talking,
communication,
oh boy, problems really, they just explode. Because if you aren't communicating, a lot of people aren't comfortable with conflict or differences of opinions, and they don't know how to problem solve. And that's
or they don't want conflict to enter their lives.
Well, right. And how can you avoid conflict? I mean, when you love people, you don't always feel the same way about the same thing at the same time. You need to be able to have healthy dialogue. And that's what Resolve does. We meet with families, we sit down with them, we spend a great deal of time in the beginning getting information from every party, and bring everybody together and try and open up lines of communication. Everybody gets a chance to be heard, especially that older adult. Very often, I start to see, even with my own mom, I have to remind myself, she's 78, but she still has a right to decide for herself.
Definitely.
She's not my child. She's a grown woman. She's allowed to make choices. I don't always have to agree. We could talk about
and you
things
could give
that
your
we're
opinion.
concerned about. That's
you
right.
could say, let's look at it this
Right,
way.
right.
Or what do you think
And
about this?
How grateful am I that my mom came to her own decision about retiring from driving because she scared herself. But that becomes an issue that many times family members, they either they don't want to deal with it at all. They wait until something happens. Right.
They don't want to do
They don't want to do all the right.
Because it's their time.
But you can't just take somebody's keys either. Because how does that, I don't know about you, but if somebody tried to rob me of my decision-making power, that's awful. And what we know about older adults, Well, but anybody, if you feel like you've lost control or you don't have a say, that certainly will contribute to getting depressed.
Oh, definitely.
That's how we ended up here today. So, helping family members have conversations. Mediation is a voluntary process. It doesn't always lead to an agreement. It's not a legal process. It really is a facilitated conversation with professionals who are trained in issues about how to communicate and issues unique to aging family members. It's very useful to help people get out there what they need to say and to empower. And that's, I think, especially important as we age. We need to have everybody remember,
Yeah,
age doesn't mean I've become unable to make my own decisions and to think for myself and have my own opinions or to be taken seriously.
And it doesn't mean that you, the senior, are right, because that's
right.
how you feel.
That's right.
I mean, that's your decision.
I might still need to listen to.
Open-minded. You have
Right.
to be open-minded.
Right.
Well, that Feel Good Bingo is a wonderful, wonderful program.
Yes.
So my viewers should check your calendars and see if you are available October 10th in Brunswick at noon.
Right, and October 11th in Wadsworth at 1.
At 1. Okay. And if you have to, ask your family member or a neighbor. Let's just say, let's
Bring
just
somebody
go to the
along.
rec center.
The more the merrier. We'll have a good time.
Definitely. You got to keep that brain active. One
Yes.
thing about my mother, even though she's 92, she watches those game shows.
Right.
And that is just so, I think it helps the brain.
Yes.
Because then you're thinking.
Right.
And, you're trying to see how much you do know and if you could remember.
Well, and you bring up a really good point. Preventative efforts and even efforts to help lift yourself out of a depression, doing things that you love doing, making connections with people. We need to stay in
definitely.
contact with people. Invite them over, ask them to take you places if you can't get there.
Yeah, do the ask.
Yeah. Physical activity. Provided your doctor gives you the clearance. You don't have to run a marathon. Get out there and dig around in your garden. Plant some flowers. Ballroom dancing. Anything. Being physically active is very much related. Remember I said it's a brain disease. That physical activity helps keep things active. It helps with things like depression and cognitive functioning. All of those things are connected.
As we said, as our body is all connected and we help each other.
Yeah.
Well, Cindy, thank you again for being on Golden Years.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity, Lori.
And I tell you guys, every month there's so much out there for the seniors.
Yes.
Nothing is too scary to ask for help. We're out there for you.
Absolutely.
So thanks again for joining us on Golden Years. Get ready for those holidays, and we'll see you next month.
Severe weather can destroy a home in seconds. There's no time to think, only time to act. Have a kit so you're ready for any emergency. Develop a plan for what you and your family will do before disaster strikes. And stay informed during severe weather any way you can. It can be the difference between losing your possessions and losing your life. Just ask the owners of this house. Visit weather.com/ready and let the Weather Channel help you prepare your family for emergencies.